Call to order the regular meeting of the school board for Monday, September 22nd, 2025. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would invite you to stand as you are able. One A, the reading of our school board meeting norms. Mr. Anderson.
Our school board meeting norms are: be prepared, be on time, value and respect each other, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation, be professional at the board table and when visiting with the general public, speak up when the norms are not being followed, and advocate on behalf of students and keep the community in mind.
Thank you. Item 2, the approval of tonight's agenda. I would seek a motion to approve the agenda as outlined in your board packet. It's been moved by Mr. Palmasino, second by Mr. Larson. We'll take a roll call vote.
Manley?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
And Berger?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Item 3, our public comment period. I do not have any public comment cards filled out this evening. Is there any member of the general public who wishes to speak at tonight's meeting? We'll move on to item 4. These are superintendent's recommendations for discussion. 4A, the Finance Committee report. Turn it over to Mr. Palmasino and then perhaps Mr. Bombach.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we had a meeting on the, it was change order number 16 for Valley Middle School for $54,275. We did okay it. It was for drinking fountains and fountains with water fillers. For some reason on the drawings, they were put on the drawings backwards, I believe. And then this is to change and correct it. So it's a change on that. But just for your information, it leaves us close to, I'm doing my 1968 math here, 600 and roughly 625,000 left in our contingency, and the builders has over $1 million in there. So we're in very good shape going forward with Valley. So any questions if anybody would have?
Sure. First, any other members of the Finance Committee wish to weigh in before we open this up to board members? Mr. Bombach, anything to add from that committee meeting?
No, just a quick reminder that the board had delegated the authority to the Finance Committee to move on any change orders that do not increase the guaranteed maximum price. So that's what's in front of you today. It's just a presentation of that decision that was made with no decision of the board requested tonight.
Thank you. Questions or clarifying comments from board members? Mr. Clevin?
Thank you. Were there any costs related to demolition, removal, or rework? Or is this all new work that was never executed at the start?
No, it was demo in that. They had to, because of the size, and then some need generator, are they generators or compressors within them for water filler. So the ones they put in wouldn't fit the original deal, so they had to do some changing of that. So there was some restructuring and reconstruction.
And those costs are included in the change order?
In that total change order, yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments from board members? Again, this is under recommendations for discussion, no board action required. So seeing no other discussion, we'll move on to 4B. School Board Self-Assessment Committee report. Turn this over to Mr. Clevin, who chaired that meeting, and then perhaps we'll hear from Mr. Manley or the board chair, depending on other statements.
We did meet for almost an hour, and there was a lot of discussion, but not a lot of actionable actions were taken. First off, we do recommend the self-assessment tool as the tool going forward for this next year. What we did talk about was possibly doing this twice a year, which would require a policy change. And the recommendation of that committee is just talk about it as a group. See if a twice-a-year self-assessment is worth the work, which now, of course, is going to be a policy change as well. So the other thing we talked about is when we get results of the self-assessment, we do want kind of a look-back report to kind of summarize the results of years prior. It mostly is a comparison tool to the year at hand. And then lastly, we did recommend adding the meeting norms onto the first page of the assessment tool, just as another reminder of what we remind ourselves at every meeting. So with that, the committee would recommend the assessment tool with the one change to add the meeting norms to the first page.
Yeah, it's a great summary. Mr. Manley, anything to add from your point of view?
Just that we're maybe looking for some input from everyone else, whether increasing the frequency would be too much ask from everybody to do that self-assessment. We hate to have burnout and have people not complete them because it's too much. So I guess that's it.
Yeah, that was well summarized by the other two committee members. So I'll open it up at this point for questions, clarifying comments, or remarks for discussion from other board members. The first year hearing this, of course, but if anyone wants to process in real time, we'd be looking for some feedback on those main points. Yes, Dr. Lund?
I understand the cons of doing it more than once a year. Tell me what the pros, what would be the positives coming out doing multiple evaluations in a year? I'm sure you guys must have talked about that.
Yeah. Mr. Clevin, do you want to go first?
We did. One, just another means of, making sure we're on task, checking ourselves. So there's a virtue of just making sure, again, twice a year instead of once a year, that we're on track and that we're doing the things we've asked ourselves to do. Secondly, there was a discussion about doing it on the same cycle as the superintendent. And personally, I feel that sort of cycle matches up well. It seems fair to kind of, while he's being, in this case, Dr. Brenner currently, it feels fair to also be reviewing ourselves. So those are the two pros that got most discussed.
Mr. Manley, anything else to add to that? Yeah, that's well stated. Other questions, comments, or discussion from board members? Yes, Dr. Hodak?
My comment would be not necessarily for us to do it more than once, but it would be very important for us to do the look back so that we're comparing to see if we are improving or if we did improve in the area that we needed that was, designated from the year before. That's where I would be with that. But then I also will ask that if we have any policy direction or what you want us to do to let us know that as well.
Others? Other board members? Ms. Flynn?
Upon hearing the discussion, I think I'm neutral about a change or not a change. I think one of the reasons why we added in the norms for our meetings was to kind of do a check-in at every meeting too. And so, certainly we've had some contentious meetings over the years and it's been like, oh, yep, the discussion's respectful. And, it's not an in-depth check-in, but the purpose of it is to share thoughts on how we're doing. And so maybe that feels to me why I'm maybe a little bit more neutral on doing a separate check-in too. I definitely think the look back would be helpful though, especially given the policy change about, and we'll talk about it, but when we are reviewing the school board's pay, I think that would be important for the school board to consider a look back. I think it would be important to look back and talk about any certainly we go through a lot of changes here and there. And so I believe that our committees do the work. And so it's a little bit more difficult to kind of add in on my perspective. I think speaking from the con, just one more thing when we're kind of doing the work already and we check in at every meeting. So I'm neutral about it. I don't have an opinion either way, I guess, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Other board members who haven't had a chance to weigh in? I'll ask it this way. Members of the Self-Assessment Committee, do you have enough information to go on as we look at this? And the 1A to that is policy review members. If there was something that went to policy, would you have enough information from board members to go on, or are you looking for more than this discussion tonight? So I'll open it up to those committee members. Dr. Lund?
Well, I would leave it up to the self-evaluation assessment committee, and I think if they feel it's worth trying, I mean, I assuming you're not going to write it in granite, and if in 2 years it really doesn't seem to be serving a purpose, we can get rid of it. On the policy committee, if they come with their recommendations, I'm not going to say no. I would say, and then instead of saying shall be done twice a year or annually, we should change it to at least annually, and then you can kind of do it without changing the policy.
Yes. Do you have anything to add, Dr. Hodak?
No, I would concur exactly with what Dr. Lund has said, that that's what we would do once we were to receive it as a directive.
Okay. Any final thoughts or questions? Mr. Clevin first, and then Mr. Manley. Yes, Mr. Clevin.
I don't really hear a strong desire to do this twice a year. So we were asking from a committee to talk about it, to gain a sense of what we wanted to do as a group. So hearing no strong consensus, I'd say we don't do it twice a year and continue on with the current once a year process, and we don't change our policy.
Mr. Manley?
Just to change it up just a hair, Mr. Clevin was a meeting chairperson on this meeting, and he did just such a wonderful job and clear and concise, and I think we should get him on more committees and have him chair more and more.
All right. The chair has not entertained that motion, but I appreciate the comment, Mr. Manley. Again, this is another item for discussion. I feel like we've been able to share perspectives, and the committee most in charge of this particular piece has what it needs. And so with no other hands in the air, I think we'll leave it there. And we'll move on to 5A. Now, these are now recommendations for action. 5A, consideration of building fund use for repair and improvement expenses. Mr. Baumbach.
Yes, Chairperson Berger, members of the board, I'm bringing forward to you a request to account for already incurred expenditures against the building fund rather than the general fund. We've done this maneuver before. In works of wrapping up last year's budget, essentially I've identified a few things listed on the cover memo here, a few different projects that would qualify under the building fund per century code as it relates to renovation, repair, or expansion of a school. This would include the Dakota Mud Jack, Environmental Abatement Services, Johnson Controls, an OP construction project, Red River Glazing, and Structures Incorporated, amounting to just under $180,000. And this would be consistent with prior priorities of prioritizing the general fund for other uses and not construction projects. It would also keep us in line still with that ending fund balance guideline or guardrails we put on the building fund. It would not take us below that threshold. So the administrative recommendation would be to account for those expenses against the building fund rather than the general fund.
Questions from board members for Mr. Baumbach? Dr. Lund?
Our ultimate goal is that these will come out of the building fund in the first place. We won't have to go do it afterwards.
Yeah, Chairperson Berger, Board Member Lund, that's the goal, but it's very clear in Century Code that every single expenditure out of the building fund needs to be approved by the board. So whether they're fully anticipated at the front of the year, like leases, we could do that. But it may be more regular or consistent if we wait near the end of the year when we get a full view of it and we bring one of those requests to the board.
Other questions, Mr. Clevin?
Probably be a couple of them in series here. Have all these invoices already been paid?
Yes, they have.
And are any of these, are they all separate projects? Not expenses kind of rigged up together from one larger project? They're all uniquely independent?
They are uniquely
Thank you.
independent, yep.
Other questions from board members? It's been a motion on the floor to expense the $179,864.19 in repair and improvement expenses incurred in fiscal year 2025 against the building fund. It's been moved by Dr. Lund, second by Dr. Hodek. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Clevin?
And this might be an unanswerable question right now, but generally, what's the building fund balance look like after these expenses? You know, one or two significant digits kind of number.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I believe we're sitting about 1.8 million, and I think in the facilities committee of the whole, we might see that number.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions regarding the motion on the floor? We'll take a roll call vote.
Palmasino? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 5B is the consent agenda. I would seek a motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined in your packet. It's been moved by Mr. Palmasino, second by Ms. Flynn. We'll take a roll call vote.
Larson?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Manley? Anderson?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
And Berger?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 5C, contracted staff resignation and release from contract. Anna Engstrom. Dr. Brenner.
Thank you, President Berger. In front of you, you have a memo from me per North Dakota Century Code 15.1-09-33. Provides authority for the school board to act on employment contracts for school district personnel. You'll find a letter attached, a resignation letter from Anna Engstrom, social worker at Grand Forks Central High School. She is asking to be released from her contract, and she is fully aware and signed the document to pay the liquidated damages under policy DKBB. So it is the administrative recommendation to grant Ms. Engstrom release from her 25-26 teaching contract effective September 30th, 2025, with the enforcement of liquidated damages. Thank you.
Questions for Dr. Brenner? Seek a motion to grant Ms. Engstrom release from her 2025-2026 teaching contract effective September 30, 2025, with the enforcement of liquidated damages under policy DKBB. It's been moved by Mr. Manley and a second by Mr. Larson. Any further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Hodak?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 5D, consideration of proposals for district-wide snow removal. Mr. Bombach.
Hey, President Berger, members of the board, each and every year we'll go out to bid for snow removal services across the school district. We take a slightly different approach this time when we did request those responses. Before, we would just ask for a quoted hourly rate, and we would break it up for 2 zones. And 2 zones just delineating between these sets of parking lots and these sets of parking lots, 2 of those. So it's conceivable that we would have 2 different vendors. In recent years, we've really only had the one vendor take on both zones. We did take a different approach this year with hopes that it would help even keep these bills a little bit lower by, rather than just charging a straight hourly rate, we would ask for a quote for per snow event. So on the cover memo, you'll see this tiered system in the table in the center, that we delineated that if there's a snowfall of 0 to 2 inches, there would be a rate quoted to clear each of those 2 zones, and then 2 to 6 inches, 6 to 12, and 12 plus. We're happy with the results here. We've gotten 2 responses this year. One is from our incumbent, the folks who provided snow removal services last year, Fertilon. And the other is a new respondent, Pro Land and Snow. In that center table, you can see the rates and how they stack up for both of the zones. I would characterize those as significantly different between the two bidders. What we're always looking for when we make a recommendation is a vendor that's both responsible and lowest bids. I would characterize both vendors as responsible. With any new vendor, which is the case for Pro Land and Snow, we follow up with additional information about the types of equipment they're using and really try to understand how they plan to tackle the amount of surface parking lot we have. And in particular, our grounds director, our manager, Brandon Ortloff, followed up and had that conversation and inspected the equipment, and he feels solid about that. And so I would characterize both of those as responsible bidders. The difference comes in at the lowest bid, and you can see those are summarized here, where depending on the type of event, but there's significant savings with the bidder Pro Land and Snow. So it's with all that consideration that administration's recommending to approve Pro Land and Snow as the snow removal vendor for the 25-26 school year.
Questions from board members for Mr. Bombach? Ms. Flynn?
Can you remind me, do we also get bids for lawn care in the spring, summer, or do we do that ourselves?
Sure, yeah. Members of the board, we do our lawn, cutting, lawn care, all of that ourselves.
Okay. And then if there's too much snow and the snow needs to be removed from site, is that covered in here?
Yeah, another great question. That is incorporated, especially when you consider like a downtown Phoenix lot. That's a part of it. So we get quotes on, they know full well they need to truck away from time to time.
Other questions from board members for Mr. Bombach? Seeing none, I would seek a motion to approve Pro Land Snow as the snow removal vendor for the 2025-2026 school year. It's been moved by Mr. Clevin. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Anderson. Further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Clevin.
Yes.
Manley.
Yes.
Hodak.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Flynn. Larson. Lund.
Yes.
Palmesino. Berger.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 5E, General Fund Financial Statement. Mr. Bombach.
Yes, Chairperson Berger, members of the board, here's our financial statement presented to you for the first 2 months from July 1 to August 31st. You can see they're summarized in the revenues of just over $8 million and expenditures right about $6 million, resulting in revenues over expenditures of just over $2 million. As we work through these two reports, there's not a lot of inferences yet to be drawn just because it's so early. We're coming off of paying just primarily August hours, and there's only 3 days of school. So the first report does summarize the actual against the preliminary budget, as we haven't accepted a final budget yet, so you'll see that there. You can see that revenues represent 6.3% of that preliminary budget and expenditures of 4.6%. Happy to answer any questions, but even going down to the second part of the report, it's that comparative report. And again, there's not a lot of inferences. But one thing I'll point out on the final slides, the graphical depictions, I pointed out last time that the general fund balance wouldn't quite look the same in the second month. It was a matter of timing as we got our August payment a day early, so it showed up in our July statement. But you can see how it's come to even out here. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from board members for Mr. Bombach? Dr. Lund?
From you or maybe anybody else, have we gotten any more clarity out of DC, what's going to be happening or what's happening with any of the federal programs?
Yeah, members of the board, happy to answer the question myself, or anybody can jump in here too, but I'd say no is the answer. Be looking forward to some of that information by the end of this year so we can really plan ahead, but as of this point, there's been no update.
Other members of the administration want to weigh in on that particular question? Okay. Other questions for Mr. Bombach from board members related to the general fund financial statement? I would seek a motion to approve the general fund financial statement for the period of July 1, 2025 through August 31, 2025. It's been moved by Mr. Palmasino. Is there a second? A second by Mr. Larson. Any further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Lund,
Yes.
Flynn. Palmasino. Larson. Clevin. Hodak. Anderson.
Yes.
Manley. Berger.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 5F, consideration of fiscal year 26 district budget and tax levy, certificate of tax levy. Mr. Bombach.
Thank you, President Berger, members of the board. I prepared just a little bit of a slide deck here that's same format as the preliminary budget, and I've largely taken that context of saying what has changed since the last time we spoke of this. So what the roadmap here is, and of course within the board packet itself is the state document that we'll need to submit or get over to the county auditor, so it's in that format. I cover some of the main points here, and we'll of course have time at the end for any questions. So first and foremost, kind of a roadmap here is looking back on this fiscal year 25 as we really wrap that up. Looking at of course, the fiscal year 26 budget, which would be for your consideration for approval tonight, and then how that affects ending fund balances. And just a reminder in this process, the last time we talked about this preliminary budget was in late July, so we could meet that August 10th deadline to get the preliminary over to the county auditor. Of course, there was a public hearing on September 8th. No comments were made. And then our final budget will be considered here tonight, September 22nd, to meet the October 10th deadline, because I believe our first board meeting falls on October 11th. And then this has been a slide that we like to remind ourselves. In the center column top is that pointed out some of our fiscal goals here of how much we want to have in reserve at the end of certain fiscal years, including the approaching 6/30/26 to have 15% of expenditures here. And largely this update will say we won't make that target. This was also one slide I decided to keep from the preliminary budget conversation, as it tells a little bit of the story of the last fiscal year as I work into that there were needs that emerged across the district last fiscal year as we had 200 new students arriving in our district. And so when looking through a lot of those numbers, we see after the budget was set, additional positions added to address those needs, and that's how we largely had overcome the budget goals. And so this was that summary provided at the time too. We could see that we'd come into the year earlier around budget realignment conversations. Some of the budget was set on those aspirations and they weren't achieved for the reasons I just articulated. And then also an inaccurate number as it relates to property tax estimates. They were less than anticipated. So you put those two together and you can quickly see how things got where we didn't want them and out of alignment. What has changed now between the preliminary budget conversation in late July until today is the first column here shows what we had set the budget at. The second column is that preliminary number that last time we talked about here and said this is the way things are shaping up. And then what has changed slightly is for the worst slightly of now coming over $2 million as we worked the final numbers in, as we called in federal reimbursement and got those expectations a little more figured out. Unfortunately, it took us just a little further in that wrong direction. You can see on the bottom portion of the table a starting, beginning general fund balance and then ending fund balance. You know, in both cases that has us right around that 6%, but just below that 6% of general fund ending balance. In this budget are a carry through of what happened last year largely. So as we ramped up for addressing needs of additional students, throughout the year we did see enrollment decline, which is a quite natural progression. But you would anticipate in the fall many of the same numbers to persist. And what I'll tell you is that we've seen our student enrollment drop. At that point, or at this point in the year, of course, our contracts are extended our employees hired, and so we are on a very similar path as last year as far as the number of employees. So it's hard to get ahead of that when we have secured those positions. So we have that as a headwind coming into this budget. And we also had other things that have been long since planned and we are actioning on. For example, the Career Impact Academy is opening. There comes associated costs with that. There's virtual high school, not a large amount of costs, but associated costs. There have been decisions made around curriculum adoptions and investments, and then even some technology upgrades as we are getting near end of life for some of those products. This slide was discussed again late July. These elements persist. The enrollment information is new to us as we pull it all into perspective. So taking you from left to right, the first two columns we've already discussed in this presentation. What we have, first one being that's how last year's wrapped up. When we talked about the preliminary budget in July, the second column was the anticipated number of 2.9. We knew we'd have work to do to overcome that, but very little could you do by this budget. We'd be doing the work for next budget. But in between the preliminary and the final budget, we did what work we could do, including reducing supply lines, discretionary supply lines across, pretty much across the board, of a reduction of 10%, saying, hey, we're going to enter a budget year where we need to be mindful. These are some things that can be worked into the budget and implemented. And those things helped reduce that expenditure over revenue to just under 2.7. We had 157 students reduction in enrollment, not show, so to speak, this fall. And when you take that times the per pupil calculation of just over $11,000 each, that has really put us in this reality of the budget saying, you know, by the end of fiscal year 26, this current fiscal year, we would actually be expenditure over revenue by 4.4 million. And so that's the middle point here. What I had left the preliminary budget presentation with was some variables that could change. That's largely what this slide is trying to articulate now, is what has changed then. Did those variables change? So one thing as we work up all of our hiring and work it into our September 15th payroll, you've heard me talk about that. That's when we get a very clear picture about who's here to work this year. And it was largely what we anticipated. As far as that bucket goes, we didn't see anything too dramatic. A little bit higher probably, but largely what we were anticipating. Student enrollment was something that was newer, that took us to a different level there, and that's what I've articulated. That's 157 kids. That's the financial impact of that. It's also a new concept this year to work in property tax caps. And so prior years, we could benefit from any community growth beyond 3%, both in new growth and in valuation growth, and we're capped at 3%. So when you work that into the figures, that's just a reality. I don't think it was substantially impactful, but that's a reality in this budget. And then grant allocations, there were reductions. That's not what the question was asked before about what can we anticipate in future years. There were reductions on a couple of those key federal grants this year. Again, not making up the big difference, but these were things I listed as variables that would still come into focus, and they've come into focus now. So it's not a position we want to be in, but with the property tax caps, just to show you how that comes to work on what you levy as mills. If you have growth exceeding that 3%, you need to reduce your mill levy to bring it within the bounds of only a 3% increase. And so that's what this looks like. This is the certification of mill levy that is in the documentation for tonight's consideration. And you'll see the aggregate here across the number of different mills we levy will be reduced from this last fiscal year of 130.68 down to 129.85. And so that's the functionality of the property tax caps. So it's a property tax relief as designed by the state for our local taxpayers, and that's what it comes to look like. What the budget would anticipate then on our general fund balance is really reducing this down to just over $3 million. So this is This is clearly an effort here, a signal for realignment work. We need to go through conversations as a school board, as a community, as a school district, to make sure that we shore this up and have strong reserves into the future when enrollment adjustments happen, or well, in both cases, or when expenditures exceed revenues. What I would say here as far as next steps is administration's been considering this since their preliminary budget early on, and even talked loosely or a little bit about it during our board retreat about what will be the process to ensure this comes together. Really what I would say are these key points here, that there needs to be a budget. I'm recommending a budget realignment process, administration is, but to include open conversations about budget priorities. Again, always focused on the student and the student outcomes. What is it within our general fund that needs to be prioritized? And then the connected question, what is it in our general fund that shouldn't be prioritized? Administration's envisioned a process of getting to this question early and working hard on it. And so board engagement throughout the year beginning in October. I will say too publicly that there's a lot of consideration about how to engage all stakeholders, open and transparency in this process. And the board, of course, represents the public. And so by having conversations such as these at the board table or via board retreats, we certainly anticipate the press to be present and report on that, and certainly anticipate that there are mechanisms or channels for the public to communicate that back to the board. So we as a community make this decision, and as a board, we make good decisions. Informing district employees and public throughout the process with those regular board presentations and retreats. And then the anticipation about this timeline would be really working immediately, and decisions can come as they come throughout that process. But certainly, by anticipated right around that start of March, we would have some clear decisions made for the following budget to help realign those resources to student outcomes and get that budget where it needs to be and the balance where it needs to be. So the administrative recommendation is to consider the approval of this budget in front of you and tax levy for fiscal year 26, but certainly happy to answer any questions here.
I just have one clarification, and then I'll open this up to board members. If you can go back one slide, just to be clear about the timeline, your final bullet point, this would be the start of March 2026. So
Correct.
5 months from now. I just, so that everybody hears that.
Yeah.
Yes, we're talking about fiscal year 2027, but this process will take us to a final complete realignment over the next 5 months and a few days, rather than 17 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so we're all clear about that. Questions, clarifying comments for Mr. Baumbach from board members? Mr. Clevin?
And so the action tonight is the mill levy certificate, correct?
It's the mill levy certificate and everything that follows that initial page. So that's how we get to the county auditor to approve it. But we're also setting our budget for this year, so that will work into our accounting system and then put all the controls in place for the decisions that need to be made.
And so, I mean, the biggest thing, at least as I see right now, is we're dealing with the tax levy and the revenue side. But are there corrections and changes we can make in this operating year to kind of handle the expense side? Because I kind of got a mixed message there about staffing and
Sure.
what kind of actions we could or couldn't take. I'd like a little more information on that.
I'm happy to comment on that, and I invite the superintendent to make comments too. But just as far as continuing contract guarantees, certain labor rights, et cetera, our certified individuals are protected. They have a contract. There'll be no decisions made about those positions during this year. Classified don't enjoy the same protections. There certainly could be decisions made there. And then there's the other 15% of the budget. We enter into contracts in some cases. For example, our curriculum investments, you don't make those overnight. They get locked up and anticipated. We had some technology was brought up earlier, so new equipment for our teaching staff. But we hadn't done it yet for some of our classified staff or our admin staff. So we won't do that with technology. So we'll look for all opportunities to intervene.
Dr. Brenner, anything to add?
I can just add, excuse me, a couple of pieces to that. This work started several weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago, with Brandon leading the charge, creating a Gantt chart and just kind of amortizing out each week, each month, what we would need to do to make sure we would start course correcting in this fiscal year. There are a number of things that we're looking at, and I will say that one thing that's different than what we did a couple of years ago with the budget realignment process is while we engaged all of our principals and directors in large group in this room, kind of working back and forth on concepts and getting to some forced choices, we've added some additional steps where we're actually, Dr. Glatch, Mr. Bakke, Mr. Bombuck, and myself are going out to buildings, and we're having intimate conversations with building level leadership, asking the question, what can you do this year to help reconcile that budget? And what can you be thinking about? So as we move into next year, what sort of changes could be made to help with the budget? So that's a new piece to the process. We started at Winship Elementary today. That was our first school visit. We have a number of them set up for this week. And as Mr. Bombuck indicated, you'll see in Friday Focus some hold the dates for 3 additional retreats where we want to spend some mornings with you. So when we get feedback from principals, directors, and all admin, you can see what that feedback is. And we'll also have some of them in the room, just like we did with the demographic task force and school board work sessions. The feedback that I received from people who were in the room was that was really a good process because all the people were speaking the same language and we're talking about the same things. Clarifying questions could be answered by the appropriate people in the room. So this will be if it wasn't busy last year with negotiations, it'll be somewhat busy this year as we try to reconcile that final number moving into next year.
Yes, Ms. Flynn, was that? Okay.
Just looking at some of the actual to revenue estimated, it looks like we had some gaps in the, like, what was allocated and then federal funding in a lot of areas. There's some that are blank and then next to that has a number. So, for example, like in revenue, there's other restricted federal aid in 2 categories that has a significant difference, or Title IV programs and community programs. There's one cell that's blank and the other one has a dollar amount in it. I know a question was asked earlier about the impact of the federal government, and it was like, we really don't know. But is a lot of this maybe hinged on what we do or don't know, and we're trying to get ahead of potential federal funding gaps? Do we not have the money on a certain timeline? Is that, I know we talked about other things, like we have less children this year and some finalized salaries, but it looks like some of the changes might be federal funding too. And I don't know, maybe if I'm getting them switched around where it was estimated that we got nothing and now we're getting something, but I'm just curious if we can talk more about that. Because I know when we were in negotiations, one of the things that we talked about was part of the scary unknown with all of this is where we're at the federal level and the state level. We just, where do we begin to even have realignment conversations when there's a lot of unknowns and, we're kind of going off of assumptions, which we do, our budget team does a pretty good job of, but, my worry is always we plan for something and then the money doesn't come through. Even there's a section with career and technical ed, like joint programs that had a big difference in there too. So I'm just curious about some of those conversations, kind of thinking out loud.
Yep, members of the board, Board Member Flynn. I'm honest, I'm not sure exactly which document you're referencing. But what I can say is first and foremost, I have argued before, it's sort of like good hygiene, something we should do each and every year. The word realignment is the opportunity to not just course correct when things aren't positive, but it's to continually reinforce the priorities of the district and the things that aren't priorities, and point them towards student outcomes, and you can decide what's working and what's not working. So I would say that's a really healthy thing to be doing in the first place. And two, yes, contingency planning, I mean, that's a big part of why we want to build that reserve balance in the first place. That's why it's a board goal. I think when it comes to the feds and what they will or will not do, we learned a little bit this past year that it would be most likely, Title II or Title IV that would be of concern, which is a smaller number than all of the federal grants, but just the same, we need to be planning for it. That has been a part of the conversation. I would say that the way that this budget is put together is simply taking what they've told us we have received, which is a lower amount than the prior year, but it is not anticipating a complete removal of those. And of course, if that decision came, then we would need to do additional work to make that whole, to cover that.
Other questions or comments? Oh, yes, Mr. Bakke.
Yeah. Thank you, members of the board, Member Flynn. I do want to articulate some of the concerns that you do have relative to the uncertainty that did exist through the title funds. One thing I also want to note is that we did receive a decrease in our title funds. Specifically, when I say that, I'm talking about our Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. Again, I've shared that the overall decrease that we saw in those funds. Again, not all of those were completely decreased. But when we look at them in totality, it was decreased. Overall, as a state in North Dakota, we received right around an 8% decrease when it came to Title I funds. And so, yes, we are seeing some of that impact. However, one other thing I want to note is that when we talk about title funds and we talk about our federal funds, typically it's a revenue and expenditure balance. So as we expend those dollars, we also receive the matching revenue on the other side. And so when we look at our overall general fund, the only way that really plays a huge impact on the general fund is if we don't have the dollars to match the current contracts that we are under. And so when we receive decreases, and I will say that some of the notice of what our current allocations were this year were later than they typically have been, which again, contracts are already set, we have staff members in place, and then we receive an allocation that is less, or in some cases maybe more. We have to do some fluctuations based on what the situation is. And so the more uncertainty and the more we don't know, it makes it more difficult to do that. However, on a typical situation, the revenue and expenditures should match and should not overall impact the general fund, as long as everything is set that way. I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, it does. I think, it's hard to play with dollars and cents when people keep changing their minds above us. So my last question was, can you remind me where we're at on the on-time funding schedule? I know it was like a graduated to get to on time instead of counting the students we had last year. Is it 100% this year? No, like where we got revenue for students last year instead of how much we have in the seats.
Just to clarify Board Member Flynn's question, the previous practice was last year's enrollment would determine this year's per pupil payment,
Yeah.
and there was some action toward getting it in real time. And so the question
But it
was
was a graduated scale.
was
Yeah.
where we're at in that process of that marking the actual students you have enrolled in that current year. Does that question make sense?
Yes, Board Member Berger, members of the board, yeah, and Matt was just going to look that up, so we have a concise answer. I don't recall exactly, but yeah, I can talk about too. The way that works too is they take the fall snapshot of just what the enrollment is this time of year, and they will pay you off of that. But then they want to be careful not to have overpaid you, so they take another check in the spring for your ADM, and that's where we've seen a reduction. So then this coming budget, they'll take back a little bit and say, we overpaid you on that. And then now you'll take a snapshot of your current year. So when you're in declining enrollment environments, and we don't have a trend, we just have a single year of data. I'm not suggesting we're in a trend, but that's where it can be difficult. we could follow up with you too and make sure you have the answer.
Members of the board, Member Flynn, if I recall off of memory right now, it's 80% is what our graduated rate was. I'm just trying to verify that here, so, but I believe it's 80% this year. Would be 100%, correct. That's my recollection, but I'll verify that and circle back. Thank you.
Other questions, clarifying comments? Dr. Lund?
Well, I just wanted to say I'm certainly in support what's being proposed tonight for approval. I like the plan from what I've seen. I just have two caveats. One is there should be no sacred cows when we're looking at the budget. That means no sacred cows in anywhere. We should look at everything. Number two, do it in a logical, common sense, non-emotional way. And then three, I heard talk about the public, and I like what you talk about, but I think we need to make sure that the public is well informed throughout this process, in addition to staff, parents, everybody else. I just want to make sure that they're informed throughout the process. And you outlined some of the things that would keep them informed, including our meetings. So, but I'm generally in favor, and I like what I see. It's not going to be easy, but yeah. As the old people at the corner can say, there's years that aren't easy. So,
Thank you. I have just a few things, and then we'll see if other board members have thoughts or questions before there's a motion on the floor. We have seen this triple impact of federal support being, let's say, uncountable or a moving target, and that's certainly has had an impact on districts across the country. The state funding formula for per pupil payment came short of what we were lobbying for, and the cap on property tax is certainly another piece of that as well. These all individually have their bases in public policy, but it has made a perfect storm of sorts. So these decisions have impacts. I know I'm speaking more to members of the public than those of us in this room, but it's important to lobby for the importance of public education and for our title funding at every level. The second thing that I'll say, and I know we just have had a difficult realignment process. I do think the conversation changes when we're talking about during this last realignment process. Do we really need to be at 15%? Could we get to a 15% fund? Could we get there more gradually? Is such a different conversation than we're going to be at 2% if things don't change. And so I just think everyone involved needs to hear that we're talking about some of the same things, some of the same concepts, but this is a very different conversation and a very different time. And so we're willing to do the work. It's important work. And we do need to look at everything in a pragmatic fashion. And finally, I'll say, because it's the one thing that hasn't been said, there may be questions about how can you be opening up a Career Impact Academy? How could you be opening up a new Valley Middle School, talking about a new K-8 school on the base in the midst of this? What on earth are you doing? Just a reminder that the Career Impact Academy was a public-private partnership, some state support. This was not a property tax. This was not a referendum. This is not sales tax, right? We are thankful for the successful referendum that has us opening a new Valley Middle School, safety and security projects throughout the district. Those are separate funds that are not a part of this conversation. And so I just want to name that and get out ahead of it, that we are talking about our general fund balance and revenues and expenditures separate from the projects that you see throughout District 1 and the Air Force Base District. So just wanted to name that in case anyone has any question about how could this possibly be. That's how it can possibly be. And again, our thanks to the public for their support, but we are talking about separate pieces, separate ledgers. Any other questions or comments? Dr. Hodek?
I'd like to hear from Dr. Brenner as to basically, we've been hit with this triple threat storm, and it's not going to be easy for us, for any schools. What would the NDCL and the School Boards Association, what are they doing to track some of these areas that are impacting and now will influence? My fear is that we have seen in this state such an increase in density in the larger schools, Fargo, the West Fargos and such. But what are you hearing, one, from other superintendents about this? And two, what are the organizations that represent us, as far as NDCEL, the School Boards Association, United, what are they doing to make sure that our people that serve at the State Department, our Education Commission and such, as well as our legislators, truly understand what some of their decisions have made? I know the tough part with the feds, but with the state and with this 3% cap, we've been hit hard.
I agree with everything you just said. Now to answer your question. The 16 largest school districts just got together last Friday at Camp Grafton in Devils Lake, and we actually talked about some of the challenges that we have in front of us, and we talked about this last legislative session. And, you know, what we all agree on is this last session was pretty hostile to public education. You see the signs that are up around our community about we love our public schools. There's a reason for that, and we're trying to get ahead of the next legislative session by symbolically communicating that public education is important. We felt like on our list, our 11 to 14 things that we wanted to get across the finish line, we were 0 for. We were 0 for 14, 0 for 11, 0 for whatever. You know, the win that we had to do with the Air Force Base and having access to 2% loan money to build that school on the base. But NDCEL, all of us contributed through our membership for the North Dakota School Study Council. We increased our membership fees so we could hire a lobbyist and a retired superintendent who spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill, and it was just really difficult. I have some legislator friends who I grew up with, I went to school with, who are common sense people, who shared with me that it felt like the Wild West in Bismarck. I mean, they were public servants, public advocates, public education advocates, but they were in the minority. You know, even in their own party, they were in the minority. So we know that when we speak as one voice, we actually talked about this last Friday when North Dakota United, North Dakota School Board Association, and NDCEL talked with one voice. We almost felt like we were punished. I think we were at 3% until the three organizations came together, really lobbied hard for 3, and it went to 2.5. So it's a delicate dance politically, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop fighting on behalf of our students and on behalf of our communities. So I think there's, you know, maybe the bookend of this is there's good synergy behind school district leadership across the state to try to get what we actually need to run our schools. I mean, we haven't even talked about all the other communities with buildings that are over 100 years old. We just happen to be in a fortunate spot here in Grand Forks where we now have positioned ourselves well, facility-wise, for the next generation. Thank you.
Other questions, clarifying comments or remarks from board members? Yes, Mr. Bakke.
President Berger, members of the board, just wanted to go back to Member Flynn's comments or questions. Based on what I can see on the foundation aid formula at this point, we're at 100%. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Anything else from board members? Yes, Mr. Clevin?
I mean, just given the realities of contracts and all that, we seem destined to deficit spend this fiscal year. Is that an accurate summary?
Mr. Baumbach?
Yeah, members of the board, I would characterize it that way.
So it's really going to be incumbent on us to, I'll just reiterate what we already know. There's a lot of work coming up to kind of get this back to that reserve fund balance we're shooting for. So out of just kind of, there's no other option, I'll vote in favor of the budget, but it's a bit of a bitter pill to swallow that we're going to deficit spend again.
Others? Dr. Hodak?
Just one other comment to add to that would be that I think that's what I'm trying to say is we need the public to understand, and it needs to be in there because I don't want to hear the public saying, we as stewards of their money have not been taking care of it. We've been hit with this triple threat, and they need to understand that we're dealing with it, but I would believe that there's going to be many districts throughout the state or deficit spending, or you're going to also start seeing the cuts that are going to be coming, and that's when we're going to be hurting our students, so.
Others? Mr. Palmasino?
Brandon, I just wondered, can you put a number? I think people need to know what a number, we keep talking 2%, 3%. If we would have received the same as the higher ed received, that 3%, instead of 2.5%, what is that number that we lost? Was that close to $5 million, would you think, on student enrollment and everything?
I can appreciate the question, and I'd like to answer it, but I would want to be accurate. So I apologize. I don't know if I'll have that ready right now.
If roughly a range, though, between 3 and 5 million, I would say it would be. If that would be not exact.
It certainly could be. I apologize. I'm not sure I
Okay.
have that.
Other questions, comments from board members? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the attached budget and levy, which calls for a total levy of 129.85 mils. It's been moved by Dr. Hodak. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Clevin. Is there any further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Flynn? Manley? Lund? Palmasino? Larson? Clevin? Berger?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 5G, designation of NDSBA convention delegates. Dr. Brenner?
Thank you. Again, you have a memo from me. We've got the school boards convention coming up here in October, the third week of October anyway. I think that's on your planning calendars. And this board has authorized up to 5 delegates. And to date, we don't know if any board members plan on attending, either Thursday or Friday. But if you do plan on going, please let us know, and we will make sure we get the names to the convention folks so they know who the delegates will be for Grand Forks District 1 School Board. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Brenner? Yes, Mr.
I
Clevin?
know I've seen these emails, and I know I have the dates somewhere, but what are the dates of the convention? Because I'm going to be looking at my calendar here. October 8, 9, does that sound about
No,
right?
it's more like the third week. We're getting there.
Sorry to ask you questions I should know the answer to.
9th and 10th.
It is.
Mr. Anderson surmises the 9th and 10th of October, Thursday the 9th and Friday the 10th.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Dr. Brenner? Tonight's action for the board is to authorize Dr. Brenner to designate up to 5 members should they choose to attend. So I would seek a motion that the board authorize Dr. Brenner to designate up to 5 members as delegates to the 2025 NDSBA Annual Convention. It's been moved by Mr. Clevin. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Anderson. Any further discussion?
I'll volunteer, I'll clear my calendar.
All right, so we've got one. Any other comments on designating and authorizing Dr. Brenner to submit these delegates? We'll take a roll call vote.
Flynn? Clevin?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Palmasino? Lund? Manley? Larson? Berger?
Yes,
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
motion passes. A special thank you to Mr. Clevin. 5H, policy review. Dr. Hodek.
Yes, as you can see within your packets, that the policy review committee met on September 11th.
Would you turn your mic on, please?
Sorry about that, I forget all the time. So, anyway, the policy committee met on September 11th, and with district administration, we are recommending the following. There are 13 policies, not quite as many as there were last time that we had to go through in that. However, you will see that the text is there for you to have reviewed, and I'm not certain, President Berger, how you want us to do it one by one again, or just pick up on those that we want to discuss and do the overall, however you decide.
I think either would work before we start moving into the motion portion. Dr. Lund, anything to add from the Policy Review Committee meeting? So it seems to me that we would certainly want to take BDD separately, since that we had quite a bit of conversation about that at our last meeting. Perhaps we'll start there, and then we'll look at the list of others to see if any board members want to pull any out
Right.
of that group. But we'll take first policy BDD. And so we'll go back to our Policy Review Committee members to talk about this conversation specifically. It is captured, at least in part, in the meeting minutes from September 11th. Do either of you want to go first on capturing the conversation and concepts? Oh, Dr. Lund, first to Dr. Hodek.
Thank you. Basically, with that, this was the policy that we did take the longest on for that evening, and we considered a lot of comments. All three of us had done a lot of research. We looked at articles and what was happening in other schools as well. And we also had the history brought up to us and what's been happening in the past as well. I would say that we considered everything from talking about, is there a way to maybe bring up daycare and have a stipend for daycare with that, and to do some things. So we considered a lot of different ways of navigating through this. We talked about a board member with no children or not needing to take off from work and such. Is their salary at one? And basically, I thought we did really well at running the gambit with our discussion. But what you see in front of you is exactly what we came up with. And that's, we're looking at, making sure that the VP for this year is increased, and that the increase for all board members would be 500, starting in 2026, July 2026.
Dr. Lund, anything to add from your point of view? Any questions, comments, clarifying remarks from board members on this adjustment that has been proposed by the committee on the adjustment to BDD, the two substantive changes? Yes, Mr. Clevin?
It's nominal but symbolic. I don't think we should give ourselves a raise right now, based on what we just talked about our budget.
Other questions from board members? Oh, no, I understand. Thank you. Other board members wishing to weigh in? Dr. Lund?
I agree with Jay, but I think the reason we started this conversation, we've actually talked about it in previous years, is the concern about people wanting to apply to the board. And I've been on the board for 25 plus years, And there's been some years where we've literally going out to the community trying to find somebody to run on the board so we have at least the correct number, if not more. And so I think, and I think if you look, and again, we're comparing apples and oranges and every other fruit you want, because every school district is run completely different. I think that's why we felt that we should increase it, and we should increase it now so that for the next election cycle come next February, when people are making decisions, that they know what they're going to be paid if they run for the school board. I don't disagree with your thought process on it at all. But I also see the other side, which is we want good members, good community members to be able to decide to serve on the school board. And if we're interfering with that, we need to take a look at that.
Other comments from board members? So the recommendation of the Policy Review Committee is to make two substantive changes. I should say three substantive changes. One involving the compensation for the vice president for this current fiscal year. One involving compensation for all board members for the following fiscal year. And a third, that compensation be reviewed on a 2-year cycle. So that future boards are cognizant that while there's never a good time to talk about board member salaries, that also means that it's a good time to at least review them, even if the board at that time decides we are not increasing compensation, but that then they're making a decision for that following fiscal year. So, I will entertain a motion to make all three of those changes to increase, as you see laid out in your packet. Again, this is the committee's recommendation, to increase the vice president's compensation effective July 1 of 2025 to $6,000, effective July 1 of 2026, board member compensation to $5,500, president and vice president to $6,500, and the third piece of that motion would be compensation be reviewed by February 1st of the next scheduled election year with potential changes to compensation to take effect the following fiscal year. It's been moved by Dr. Hodak. Is there a second? A second by Dr. Lunn. Any discussion on the motion regarding these three potential changes to policy BDD? Oh, okay. So it's been brought to my attention that this is just the first reading on these changes. So do we need to back up one step?
As long as everyone understands it's the approval of the first reading, we're good.
Okay. So just a clarification, this is the approval, if assuming this passes, this would be the approval of the first reading to these changes. The board can still act whichever way it wants on this motion, but this would be the first reading. Yes, Dr. Lunn?
I just wanted to point out that, and I think it's the third paragraph down, that if a board member doesn't wish to receive compensation, Brandon will gladly take the check back and put it into the general fund or wherever. I don't know where it would go, but board members don't have to take compensation if they don't want to.
Other comments on the motion, discussion on this motion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Anderson? Yes. Flynn? Yes. Hodak?
Yes.
Clevin? No. Larson?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Manley?
No.
Palmasino?
No.
Berger?
Yes.
6 yes, 3 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Point of clarification, will this come up for second reading our first October meeting as practice? Okay, thank you. Now we have an additional 12 the first reading of these following policies. We have ABAA, FAB, ABBDA, ABCB, ABCA, ABBF, DGGA, FBA, HBAA, HEAC, ICCB, and FGCB. I believe that motion was to complete the first reading of those stated 12 policies as amended. And what I was going to say before that motion came on the floor is if there was a board member who wishes to take any of those out to discuss separately. But there is a motion on the floor. Is there a second to complete the first reading? Second by Mr. Clevin. So any discussion up to and including possibly amending this and taking a policy out? Does any board member, first of all, wish to take out any of these policies to discuss separately?
I think we need to act on, there's a motion and a second, correct?
That's correct.
So the only way we can pull something out for discussion would be to amend the motion, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. As long as we're all fine discussing these as a packet of 12. Any comments from board members about the amendments to those 12 policies? We'll take a roll call vote.
I need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was just a clarification, but not a second. There we go. Second by Mr. Clevin. One more time, any discussion about the first reading of these policies? Yes, Dr. Hodek.
I just want to continue to echo that a lot of these changes, if you read them where some were, it looks like we completely took some things out, that was all by legal counsel. So we're not doing anything that our legal counsel isn't recommending that we do. State law.
Thank you for that. Any other conversation, discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Palmasino? Yes. Manley? Yes. Lund?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. On your same memo, you have 2 additional policies. This would be to complete 1 reading of the following board regulations as written or amended. So I would entertain a motion to complete 1 reading of Board Regulation ABAA-BR and FAB-BR. It's been moved by Dr. Lund. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Anderson. Any discussion on those 2 board regulations? We'll take a roll call vote.
Anderson?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Palmasino? 9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 5I, School District Boundary Line Adjustments. Dr. Brenner.
Thank you, President Berger. We have arrived. We have arrived at an actionable item on school boundaries, and I'm going to read through the memo just so we have some historical context and a record of it as well. So over the past year, our school district has engaged in a thoughtful, collaborative, and community-centered process to evaluate and adjust our school boundary lines in preparation for the 26-27 school year. The effort has required significant time, expertise, and engagement from a wide range of stakeholders, including the demographic task force, district administrators, school board members, and the broader community. The process has included data analysis, public input through listening sessions, multiple board-level discussions, and work sessions between the school board and demographic task force that ultimately led to consensus around the final proposed boundary lines. The level of care, transparency, and collaboration that's gone into this work reflects the district's deep commitment to serving all students and families equitably while preparing for future enrollment needs. As a result of these efforts, the district is in a strong position to successfully implement the proposed boundary line adjustments at the outset of the 26-27 school year. And in the packet for the public who might be watching online or recorded would be a couple of different documents. One talks about the boundary line adjustments and the implementation plan. And the second document is more of a skinny version of who does what, at what level, elementary, middle, and high school. And finally, in the overall board packet, would be maps of the elementary line adjustments, middle school line adjustments, and high school line adjustments. So it's the recommendation of the district administration that the school board formally approve the boundary line adjustments effective July 1, 2026. In alignment with previous discussions, the implementation of high school boundary line changes will be phased in over 4 years, allowing for a smooth and supportive transition for students and their families. Thank you.
Questions for Dr. Brenner?
Just a comment,
Mr. Clevin?
and I might surmise there's not a lot of questions because this has been a very well discussed and vetted process. So thank you to everybody who did a lot of hard work here.
Thank you. I would seek a motion to approve the boundary line adjustments effective July 1, 2026, with the implementation of high school boundary line changes phasing in over 4 years. It's been moved by Mr. Clevin. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Manley. Any further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Manley?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Palmesino?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Moving on to 6A, announcements. Are there any announcements for the good of the whole? Yes, Dr. Glatch.
Thank you, Chair Berger. Just a couple at your placeholders. You have a little invitation for the welcome ceremony for our Kanama Exchange Program delegates who are coming here. So on October 2nd, we invite anybody, including the local audience members here, to Saratoga Park beginning at 4 o'clock to welcome that wonderful contingency of people. Also, I don't think the general public can see, but we have a wonderful group of human beings joining us in the audience today. Dr. Donna Pearson and Dr. Chris are hosting a Fulbright Scholarship Program, and we have 23 Fulbright Scholars amongst our schools for the next several weeks, and we're just really honored that they came to spend time with us. Lots to learn from them, and hopefully they'll learn a few things from us as well, so welcome everybody.
Any other announcements? Yes, Ms. Flynn?
I just want to give a shout out to the folks at Discovery Elementary. There's a special fourth grader whose birthday it was today, who's been in the hospital for quite a long time, and her mom came and spoke to us, I think about a year or so ago, about her. It was under Celebrating Success at Discovery, and they encouraged everyone to wear purple and had lots of fun activities, and I just think it's one example of our school district showing care and concern and love for their own. So just want to give a shout out and encourage others to do the same if they hear examples like that. So
Yes, thank you so much. Any other announcements? 6B, board requests for future consideration. 6C, school board meeting norms. Mr. Anderson, how did we do?
Very well.
Thank you. And before this item 7, just a reminder that the Facilities Committee of the Whole will meet after just a short recess. We'll probably take 3-4-ish minutes to resettle before that takes place. We don't have a published time for that meeting because we never know exactly when this meeting will end. So if that interests you, please stick around. But with that, the regular meeting of the school board is adjourned.